Hello guys, and welcome to the second iteration of the 9.0 Common Test server. We're now on test version 9. The initial Common Test release was version 7, or number 7. So, in the second wave of Common Test here, a couple of things have been changed, nothing too drastic. I think the most noticeable change is that 5 additional HD tank models have been implemented into the game, and you can see them on my tank carousel below. So the Panther 1, the Mouse, the M103, M18 Hellcat, and Tortoise have been added in HD. And that's in addition to the original 3, which were T-54, M4 Sherman, and Tiger 1. So now in the game there is a total of 8 HD tank models. And I will go over that in a moment on the specific tanks. In addition, the release notes say that there have been bug fixes for the 3 pre-existing HD tank models that I just named. So those might have been changed around a little bit. There have also been several map changes. The 2 maps, Steppes and Severogorsk, have been rebalanced. I don't know to what extent, but they have been changed physically. And the following maps have been changed in their lighting. So the lighting and the environment on these maps have been improved, and those maps are Malinovka, Steppes, Abbey, Himmelsdorf, and Mountain Pass. In addition, there are a couple of quick bug fixes and changes that have been made. There are quite a few, but I'm only going to mention the ones that I view as more important. Number 1, a new garage has been added for people without premium, so if you do jump onto the test server and you do not have a premium account, you will not get the garage that you're seeing right now. You will get whatever their new standard garage is. Second, it says on the release notes that certain game client crashes have been identified and fixed from the first iteration of the common test. So if you're having crashing problems or were not able to get the game running during that period of time, you might want to try it again to see if those errors have been fixed for you. Also, the garage camera response delay, which in my original 9.0 test video I viewed as a mouse acceleration of some sort, has been fixed. You can see that when I let go of the mouse button, the camera stops moving very abruptly, like it currently does in 8.11. So it's back to the original in terms of the garage camera, which I don't mind. Either way was fine with me, but some might not like that response delay. And the last one I will go over is a fixed issue with improper types of textures being displayed on some of the updated tank models. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and purchase the Stug Mark III-B. This was one of the tanks that was having issues where whenever you applied camouflage to it, the textures would artifact and glitch out. So I'll go ahead and test and see whether or not they've fixed that. Apply some camouflage to it. Looking good so far. Yep, So as you can see, they did fix that bug with at least this tank. I know there were a couple other reported situations where other tanks were having the same issue, where the textures would become garbled and corrupted once you applied camo to the tank. At least with this tank, it appears that it's been fixed. I'm not sure about all of the bugs that were found, but you know, if they fixed it for this tank, it's probable that they fixed it for the rest. And that's pretty much the gist of the changes in the 9.0 Common Test iteration number 2. So at this point, I will just go ahead and look over the new HD models and some of the old ones so you guys can drool over those. I'll start off with the ones that were pre-existing. So the T54, as you can see, very nice detail. One change I did spot between the first version of the test server and the current second version is that the side of the hull here, the texture has been changed, so the paint's a little bit scratched. Other than that, nothing sticks out to me as being changed. Ooh, wow, you can really see the rifling of the barrel there. That's pretty cool. That's really cool. All the way down to the end of the barrel. So I'm not sure if that rifling was there before. If it was, I didn't notice it, but cool. And of course the tracks look extremely well, extremely good. It's a little bit hard in this garage to show the other side of the tank, just because of the way that they have Wargaming set up the lighting in this garage. So instead of one top-down lighting angle, they have 3 lighting sources in this garage, and most of them are coming from, I believe, the front, the left side over here, and possibly the back. There are not many lighting sources on this side, so things get pretty dark. You'll be able to see this side of the tanks much better in game once you're actually playing, but in the garage it's a little bit tough just because of the way the lighting sources are positioned. Next was the Tiger 1. If you've seen the previous videos I released, you have already seen this tank. But it still looks pretty damn good. Lots of detail on the tracks down here. A lot of detail on the top edge of the front hull here too. Hammers and shovels, spades. There's a hatchet and a couple of viewports here, I think. Very nicely detailed. I think they could have done a little bit more work on the vents back here. I think they're a little bit darker than they need to be, but it does look pretty good. And third was the M4 Sherman. I did not see any significant changes to this one or the Tiger 1. I'm sure there have been a couple since the patch notes say that there were, but I don't have the Tiger 1 or the M4 Sherman in the live version of the game, so it's hard for me to, at a glance, tell what's been changed and what's not, because I'm not used to seeing the tank anyway. But, HD model looks extremely good. Alright, so next is the M18 Hellcat, which has been made HD. already you can see that the front armor hull plate here, a lot easier to tell where it ends and where it begins. It's a lot easier to tell that there is a curved face to the front hull here that you could shoot into at an angle. I'm not sure if those were actually there in 8.11. If they were, the model was not detailed enough to really be able to clearly distinguish it. Really nice looking gun mantlet here. Really sticks out. Let's see if I can see rifling on the gun barrel here. Maybe. Yeah, I think it's there. It's just hard to tell because of the muzzle brake on the end of the gun. You can see inside of the turret, got the shell shelf back here. The gun mechanism looks pretty impressive. The gun housing also. That's pretty neat. And the 50 cal, that might be a 30 cal, whatever it is on the top here. You can see the individual bullets and the ammunition box. The elevation change on the back top of the hull here looks very good. I'm sure the light will bounce off of those different angles pretty nicely in game also. And then a good amount of detail on the back here. The side skirts are looking extremely cool. They don't have them across the entire length of the track. And that's something I'm not sure why they don't have. Maybe the only two things I can think of historically is one, a weight issue, and number two, ease of replacing the track components. So that might be why they don't have it stretched across the entire side. I can understand mud flaps in the back here, but I don't really understand why it's on the side. I'm sure people know more about that than I do. But overall, they did a really nice job with the M18. Even the hooks on the side here. Now some of them, like on the side of the turret here, they don't stick out like they should. If those are actually hooks, they might be a type of rivet to hold armor plating together. I'm not sure, but they don't all stand out like some of the hooks like this one do. Next, go ahead and have a look at the mouse. This one should be pretty easy to get through. Basically, not a whole lot of detail on this one since it's just a box tank. They did put some pretty cool texturing. You can see kind of the tempering of the metal here, or the steel rather, on the gun mantlet. That looks really neat. Now this change here adds a lot more depth to the center front hull, so your depth perception should be better with the high resolution model, or higher polygon count model. So it should be a little bit easier to distinguish where this is in battle. I don't know yet, but with all of these HD models, it should be easier to find weak points on tanks, in theory. But yeah, this one looks pretty good as well. Again, not a whole lot of detail since the mouse is essentially just sheets of armor without much breaks in between. So as far as there is detail on the tank, what's there looks good, but It's a pretty boring looking tank to begin with, in my opinion. But you can certainly tell it's HD now. I think they could have done more work on the tracks down here. This looks a little bit blurry still, so I'm not sure if they're done with that yet. And I'm not sure if blurry would be the correct word, but it doesn't look like the same amount of detail went into the tracks on the mouse as did for, say, the Tiger 1 or the T54. This T54 in particular, you can tell a ton of work went into the tracks here. But on the mouse it just looks kinda meh. There's not really much depth perception, things don't stand out like they do on the other two I just mentioned. Yeah, might just be me, but doesn't look that impressive in my opinion. Next tank, the British Tortoise. Gonna be hard to comment on the tracks on this one because so much of them are covered up by the side skirts. But on the side skirts, you can tell a lot of work went into them. You have a lot of scratching, a lot of scraping on the texture itself. The rivets don't stand out like they should. What they've done is they've added artificial depth to them by coloring in shadows, as opposed to actually making them 3D objects. So they're pretty flat for the most part. They stick out, the bigger ones stick out a tiny bit, but they've done a lot of artificial shadowing on those. The extra tracks here on the side look really cool. All of those are completely 3D, rendered in 3D. They look really neat. The back compartment here, very neat looking. The mud flaps here and this canister, this exhaust canister, look really beat up and dented. I'm not sure why they did that. I haven't seen them do that with, for example, the T54 didn't have that. So I don't know why they've beat the hell out of the back side of this tank. And they did something similar to the front too, and I'll show you that in a moment. The tracks themselves look really neat, very thick tracks. If you've seen a real-life picture of this tank, you know how massive it is. The top of the tank looks pretty good. And the hatches here, the tumor, as people will call it, is pretty easy to see. It was pretty simple to pick out before, but I think with the HD model it'll be even easier to see it now. You know, to tell where it ends and where it begins. Looks like some smoke launchers on the sides here. Looks pretty cool. A lot of detail on the front, and this might come down to personal preference. I personally don't like how they've done this. Again, you have the mud flaps here that are just dented and bent out of shape. And you have the front of the tank here. I think it's supposed to be just heavy, you know, steel armor, but it looks like concrete. And I don't know much about this tank. I don't know the exact composition of the materials that went into making it, but it just doesn't look right to me. It looks like concrete that's been weathered for a couple decades. You look at the back of the tank, where it's, I assume, made out of the same material, for example, this strip here, and you don't get that nearly to the same extent. You get a little bit of it, but not like this. It just looks abnormally worn. And I don't mind if they, I don't want a tank, I don't need the tank to look like it just came off the manufacturing line, but I don't want it to look like it's been in a museum for 50 years either. And I would think they could strike a better balance than this. That's just my opinion. Again, I don't know a lot about the tank itself. I actually know essentially nothing about this tank in particular, other than what I've seen in the game. But it just, the front here, the texturing and the bumpiness of the textures just looks off to me. It doesn't strike me as correct. But, that might be personal preference. Very clear rifling down the barrel. The gun itself looks very, very clear, very sharp. But my only complaint on this one is, again, the amount of wear and tear that they've applied to the front end of the tank. It makes it look kind of silly, in my opinion. Let's apply some camouflage to it and see if that improves it. Yeah, not a whole lot though. It still looks pretty beat up. So that's something to think about. Let's see, the M103 has also been made in HD, and I looked over this one. I didn't have any complaints. This one looks a little bit worn, as you can see, but it's not overdone like the Tortoise was. The tracks look very cool. The hull on this tank, I didn't realize how oddly it was shaped. I knew the turret looked like it came out of the future, but the hull itself is shaped very strangely too. You can tell that under the top set of guides for the track here, the tank angles back in on itself, the hull does. And I didn't know it was shaped like that. And on the bottom here you can tell that it's not flat either, it's kind of a bowl. And it's a very weird tank. Like I said, I knew the turret was abnormal in its shape, as you can clearly see, but I've never paid much attention to the hull, mainly because I don't have this tank in the live game. But it does, it's a really neat looking tank, and it makes me want to get one, to be frank. Lots of detail into this one as well, and I couldn't find anything that looked off on this one. Everything just fell into place very nicely. The light bounces off all of the components pretty nicely. And again, there is rifling in the barrel, but it's a little bit hard to see past the muzzle brake. I think some more work could have gone into the lights here, or the bulbs, but and these tracks, they don't look as much detail went into the actual faces of the tracks here. I don't know how hardware intensive that would be to actually make the 3D parts stick out as opposed to just drawing shadows, but I think they probably could have put more work into this as well. But other than that, things look really nice. And I'm doing all this nitpicking with the information in mind that is extremely tedious to resample and rework these models. So I'm not faulting the overall picture. What's been done overall is extremely nice, but there are a couple of minute details here and there that I think could be redone, or need some more attention at least. But yeah, that one's looking pretty nice so far. And I saved what I thought would be the best for last, which is my favorite out of all these tanks, the Panther 1. And as you can see, pretty good detail into the tracks itself. Good amount of detail on the exhaust here. Even the exhaust filters on the end have been included, which look really neat. You got a couple of ventilation fans on the top of the hull here to cool down what is essentially a jet engine on the later Panthers anyway. This is one of the few tanks in the game that I actually know a lot about. The turret here, I don't know, something about the turret width seems a little bit off to me. I think it might have been a little bit wider at the most extreme parts in real life. And I'm not familiar with the gun mantlet. It's a different model than I'm used to seeing, but I'm sure it existed. Oops. Very precise muzzle brake here. You can really tell how finely tuned and engineered this tank had to be. The tolerances were extremely low. It's one of the big problems it had in the field. Front looks pretty solid. I feel that this MG port is going to become a pretty big target, bigger than it was before, due to the amount that it sticks out now. It's a lot more 3D and depthful. That's not really a word, but there's a lot more depth to it than there was in 8.11 at least. And looking at the tank overall, it looks like I can't quite put my finger on it, but it looks a little bit more miniature than it did before, and it might just be the HD textures, but I think it looks more closer to what it was in real life because of that. Another thing I noticed is that the two fuel canisters on the back here, I don't see a lot of those in the pictures and documentation that I've read and studied. I know they existed, but I don't think the drivers actually kept those back there. If they did, they were protected by additional plating. They weren't just left exposed like that. But other than that, it looks pretty nice. And as you can tell, I've got the long 75 on here. L100, 75 centimeter. 7.5 centimeter, excuse me. And I do like the finish that they put on this. The wear and tear, it looks like it came out of a factory, but they didn't use brand new materials to make it, which is how a lot of them were made. So it does look pretty neat. And if you apply camouflage to it, it looks even cooler. It looks like they did up the resolution of the camouflage pattern itself also. I know that this camouflage pattern on the German tanks, this pattern in particular, has always looked pretty crappy because it's just so low resolution. It looks like they've upped that. This is one I currently would use, but I think I might switch back to the probably the disruptive. Maybe the zebra. I'm not sure. And then I usually use this one or that one for desert. So yeah. Now it looks like they've tried to apply the camouflage to the gun itself, which is new. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, it's kind of hard to apply camouflage to a gun that's that long. It just looks a little strange. And they aren't applying any camouflage to the wheels. So I did see that from one of the developers. They've opted to not include camouflage on the actual wheels of the tracks. They said that looked strange when the tank was in movement, so they've opted to not do that. But yeah, those are the majority of the significant and important changes to 9.0 iteration number 2. If I missed anything that is significant, or if I should cover anything that I did not, or if you just have questions or comments, please leave all of that in the comments section below. I hope you guys enjoy 9.0 test. For those of you who do have the first iteration, the download for the second iteration is roughly 660 megabytes. And I'm hoping that the live version of 9.0 will come out sometime in the next week or two. I don't think anything official has been announced as in terms of dates, but generally that's how it goes. And thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoy version 9.0.